Discussion now. As Nigerians grapple with the aftermath of the fuel subsidy removal, President Bola Tinubu has directed the National Economic Council to come up with the input on palliatives and the minimum wage review as part of measures to cushion the pain of subsidy removal. With petrol price selling for an average of 500 naira per litre, the cost of transportation, food prices, among others, have soared. While many groups have protested against his decision, others say it will benefit Nigerians in the long run. That is the crux of our discussion next. Joining us in the studio to discuss the latest action by President Tinubu is a public affairs analyst, Ibrahim Great. It's nice to have you join us, and welcome home. It's good to. The last time we spoke, I had you on the program, you were in Canada.
Yeah.
But you've been around since the presidential inauguration.
Yes, I have. It was a hard-fought election, so we have to be here for the, the inauguration. Yeah.
Good. It's great to have you home.
Thank you.
Right. And we also, from Abuja studio, we have an economist and public affairs analyst as well, Mayokun Ilo. Mayokun, good morning. It's good to see you.
Yeah, Mike, good to be here. Good morning to you.
Great. Great. Now, let me start with you, Mayokun. The president has, in fact, the last 2 weeks has been really busy with decisions that he needs to take and all of that. But looking at the issue of the palliatives that he has given the directive and the order or the instruction to the Economic Council, I wonder what you make of this as to what Nigerians should be expecting at times like this.
Thank you, Mike. I think it's a good step in the right direction. To the maybe consternation of some, admiration of many. The president started and he has kept the momentum going in doing the kind of things that Nigerians want to hear. He talked about palliatives even before everybody. The moment he mentioned that subsidy was gone, he was talking about minimum wage issues and other palliatives. And now the nuts and bolts have come. He has directed the Executive Council to do the needful, come up with solutions, with palliatives that can be adopted in the immediate term, in the short term, in the medium term, and in the long run. Because at the end of the day, we are looking for low inflation. We are looking for close to full employment. These are the things for us. But in the meantime, you have to make sure that people don't die. You can't govern over people that are impoverished. So the poverty has been with us. More than half of Nigerians are living below the poverty line, as it were. But now we have to dig ourselves out of the hole we have found ourselves over the past years. It's a good thing that subsidy is gone. It's not going to be easy digging ourselves out of whatever it is that we have found ourselves over time. But the savings from subsidy can be used to now push the economy in the right direction, maybe with diversification and the rest of it. So I would say the president has started well. I wish him well. I hope he has a team of people who can deliver the goods, the kind of goods he wants delivered, so that within the next 4 years, we can make some kind of progress that maybe we have not seen in 40 years. It's possible, it's doable, and I'm sure the president has both the will and the capacity to carry it out. It's a good team, of course.
All right. Let's put you on hold, Mr. Elo, and come back to the studio for some more insights on this issue. So, Abraham, people have said everyone seems to be on the same page as to, the removal coming. It's better late than never, the need for the government to have done the needful. But in terms of how well to execute it, that it will not have a harsh impact on Nigerians, it doesn't appear like, everyone is there yet, or that the country is where it should be. But how does it look, from your end?
You see, for the way I look at this is the difference between planning and preparedness. People would expect that, there should be better planning. Maybe the president will come in and begin to remove this thing gradually and stuff like that. But when you have a leader that is well prepared, that understands what he's doing, his decisions are key. We need to follow the lines of his decision. He made similar decision when he was governor of Lagos State because he's a very decisive person. When you look at the economy of the country, we have a revenue problem. And when you look at the same thing in your personal life, one of the things you do, if you watch the statement of the president, and one of his first statements, it was talking about, I inherited the liability and the asset. So when you look at income and expenditure, one of the first way when you don't have enough revenue is to look at expenditure, what can go. So we have a major expenditure in terms of subsidy as a major one. If you have that removed, you've created a big gap that you can now use what is going into that to fix the revenue problem. Because if, say you are spending 100 million and your income is 21 million, you already have a deficit, serious deficit. But if you look at something in your expenditure that you can actually attack and say, look, this is going to be painful. I don't need to use SUV any longer. Let me start using bicycle. It's going to be strenuous. It's going to be difficult. But that decision in the long run is going to help the nation. Now, here is the key. What it does with that revenue save now becomes what makes meaning to the country. If at the end of the day we're able to take what is going into palliative, last year alone we spent $1 trillion in subsidy, for example. If we're able to pump that into infrastructure like transportation, Nigeria is too dependent on private, transportation. We need to develop more of our public infrastructure in terms of transportation, train system, bus system, like we're seeing this, what do you call them in Lagos again? BRT, the BRT system, the train systems that we're having right now. The way I always look at Nigeria, most part of Africa, is that we're almost 300 years behind development. So when you get to places like China and see, we compare ourselves a lot to China. But when the British got into China, there was already development there. You look at those countries, they have monuments, development buildings that, 1,000 years, when we were still having mud houses. In Nigeria, we are so backward in infrastructure that we look at going to Europe, Paris, London, New York, as though we're going to heaven. We need to be able to take revenue right now and massively develop our country in terms of infrastructure, not spending those money on some marketers.
Okay, Michael, let me come to you on this. One of the criticism that Nigerians have had against this move is a lot of persons said that from the comments we have heard that there should have been this palliatives, the template created before the removal or the announcement of the removal of subsidy. Instead of removing it first and then setting up a committee to come up with or draw out a template. What difference does that make, though?
Well, it's a classic chicken and egg story. The deed is done anyway. Hindsight is always 2020. It's been done now. I think the whole idea is once people are expecting it, everybody has been expecting subsidy to be removed, at least by the middle of the year. The moment you give an inkling to it, the marketers will latch on and you begin to see scarcity. So I wouldn't say the way the president put it was the most optimal way to put it, but, well, we campaign in poetry, we govern in prose. That is done. What is done is already done. Now that we are here, the important thing is that the president appreciates that minimum wage itself has to go up. And I was giving some thought to this earlier. I think on average, if I work for 1 hour and I'm able to get 1,000 naira, that means I'm looking at an average of 160,000 in a month. TUC and Labour, they are asking for 200. Maybe just for negotiation start, if the president wants to maybe do around 100,000, I think it's a good start. But you don't also have to pay the whole 100,000. The beauty of government is they can put one figure in the paper and they tell you are paying 20 or 25% of tax. So if you have a minimum wage of 100,000 naira, for instance, 20% of that can go as tax, which comes back to the same government. Then we can use one stone to kill 2 or 3 birds. In that, I can also look at pension. You can say, okay, another 10% goes to contributory pension scheme. That comes down to maybe 70,000. Then use 5,000 for NHIS. You know, our adoption rate for NHIS is about the lowest in Africa. These are little things, little wins that can instantly, you know, gratify the people to the government, so that the people will know that, okay, the government is working for us. If with the adoption of that NHIS, government can look into the health sector, for instance. You can also look for ways at which, with which to focus on education now. Maybe scholarship schemes, maybe bus passes or school meals. As it were, that has been done. You know, the devil always is in the details. It's a good thing, the initiative itself, but if not well executed, it becomes the kind of cure that is more deadly than even the solution, the problem it was trying to solve in the first instance. So everything boils down to execution. We don't need more commissions. We don't need new ministries. What we need is to focus and firm up the existing ones that we have. We've had a lot of corruption. That's the 300-pound gorilla in the room. So government has to focus on that. The one part of it is removing subsidy, releasing the money. The other part is the fact that many of the savings we've had in the past have ended up frittered away or ending up in private pockets, or even in the pockets of politicians. So if the current president, Mr. Bola Tinubu, wants to put his names in the annals of history, he should not just focus on removing subsidy, which affects maybe the poor. He should focus on the cost of governance itself. So that when you focus on cost of governance, you reduce all these long convoys that politicians are used to. You saw there was a clip that went viral 2 or 3 days ago where the Prime Minister of Netherlands was walking on the road. The fact is not that there is no security. The fact is the security is meant for every citizen. But in Nigeria, the security of that is given by the police and the whatever is concentrated towards the elite in society. You see one so-called big man who has even no part in government, just because he has some money. You see 10, 20 policemen milling around him. You know, they take over the road and every other person cannot move. These are the issues we have to look at. When I think when Raji Fashola, the minister, was governor of Lagos State, we had some sanity on our roads, even in Lagos. These are things that can be replicated nationwide. All these use of sirens, you see army, you see police, you see the little Izu moving with 4 or 5 people, and they are working with sirens all around and disturbing the peace of every other person in society. So the government, as I said, should focus on little wins, focus on the short term, on the medium term, and on the long term issues. So that what can we do now to affect people? You know, I've looked at other countries. What have they done? In Kenya, they went for rural electrification, for instance. In Tanzania, they look at bus passes, they look at energy. What we should be asking questions, put the people together, brainstorm as it were. It's not a commission, it's just people that come together, ad hoc committees. Can we look at this in 2 weeks and 3 weeks and come up with something? It doesn't have to take 60 days or 100 days to do. These are things that I believe that the president has been looking at even while he was outside government. So it's not like he lacks the ideas. He just needs to corroborate those ideas and get feedback. Another problem we have in governance is that people in government assume they have all the knowledge. So maybe we are in an era of change where government looks, okay, I need to consult with people. I was quite glad when I saw that, okay, NLC within 1 week, they've been in Nasoro 3 times. These are things that, okay, before they even talk to them before, they will have gone on strike for 5 days. Now, we want to avert the strike. What can we do? Even the president is the one telling you, okay, focus on minimum wage, focus on other things, bring ideas to the table. Then we run the numbers. And lastly, I should also say that, okay, what we need is a data-driven society. My colleague in your studio was telling you that things are working in other countries because they can measure. And when you can measure, you can manage. You cannot be doing things on the basis of God said or on the basis of I think. No, run the numbers. What are the numbers saying? How many people are we going to affect by this? They've told us that, okay, 10 million households, $800 million. Left to me, I don't think that's the best use of that $800 million. How else? Ask the people. Keep the money in an oven for 2 weeks. Then what can we do? How can we make sure that people at all levels of society are affected? I'm not talking of only North and South. I'm talking of people across spectrum of society. So once we do that, we'll be sure that we continue to be on the right track and the solution will come to us over time. Mike.
The government, right. The government also would obviously have to address the issue of trust because that has also, we're also seeing it play out, you know, somehow in this fuel subsidy removal controversy, how that, government after government in the past have kind of disappointed Nigerians over how it uses its funds. And we've seen, you've spoken at length about, how this has been managed over the years, and now that we are forced to take this route eventually. But he mentioned, as Mr. Elo mentioned, the moves, the intervention of the Nigeria Labour Congress, of course, and the Trade Union Congress in all of this. Now talks are scheduled to resume on the 19th, and a couple of Nigerians also believe that they have been, shortchanged. Perhaps is this the best Labour could have given us in all of this? Of course, both sides acknowledge that there are still thorny areas that they are not on the same page on. But what do you make of, the interventions by Labour on behalf of Nigerians?
First, let's address the issue of trust. You see, there are many elements that determines trust, and transparency is one of them. And so far, in less than 2 weeks, we can see that this government is at least communicating. Almost every meeting that the president is having, we are almost seeing them live. We're seeing the discussions, we're seeing the exact, or if not the summary, in some cases the full length of the discussions that they're having. We've not had that in a very long time, if at all, we've had that in our government. What we see with Nigerians is that Nigerians are very brilliant people. If you educate them, they will understand. And what this communication is doing, there's so many things we don't know in Nigeria. I remember one word, triage, was on Twitter one day, and before you know it, everybody, Nigerians get educated very easily, but through a social means. So this communication is going to help to bridge trust. Now, the question many Nigerians would then ask is that, are these people just going there to meet this president and just laugh and just make us feel comfortable that he's a good man? Some of us that have known him, I've known him since my early 20s, and I knew him from outside Nigeria. I've lived outside Nigeria for almost 27 years of my life. This man is extremely competent. When I mean extremely. So because of his leadership, when you sit around him and you hear the way he talks, because he doesn't talk too much, he's not as energetic as some of us are and expresses when we talk. But each time he talks, how does he talk? He interjects when you are doing your presentation, you are giving an opinion, and the quality of his question, the quality of his contribution, it makes you to shiver and to go and do your homework. And that is what we are seeing with NLC, with all the Governors Forum, with the Senator, all the people that are meeting with him. They're in awe of the quality of the man upstairs, and that is leadership. Leadership, is a lot to do with competence. And if you're able to hold your turf, you are having a meeting with a group of people, some of which are coming to antagonize you, some of which are coming to ridicule you, some of which are coming to test your level of, sagacity, and they all left with a smile, and they're all leaving that, okay, you know what, we're not going to fight anymore. I think we're going to be part of making this thing work. It means we probably got at the wheel somebody that knows how to drive, someone that knows how to pilot. So in terms of what the NLC achieved, first of all, to Nigerians, we already have an NLC right now that have proven to us that they can no longer just be a bait at the hand of the opposition. If our nation is going to develop, we have to keep aside opposition politics for now. Opposition politics is good for developed nation. When you have a nation to develop, you have to go to what China did. When China was in poverty, in the 70s, they came around and they formed a government that is economic focused. You see what they've done recently? I have a problem with democracy. I agree with democracy, but I don't think a nation like Nigeria should practice democracy the way they practice it in America. UK is not a democracy. It uses democracy as a tool. There is a monarchic system of governance. In China, for example, they don't have election every 4 years. The amount of money, the energy, the antagonism we have in politics of every 4 years, people die, it's too much. We have a nation to develop. It's a time where NLC every government parastatal need to come on the table and have a consensus that we are, for the next 40 years, Nigeria should develop ourselves massively. Between now and the next 40 years, there should be no difference between Nigeria and London. And these things are practicable. When we leave opposition apart and we begin to deal with policy that will move our nation. One more thing, what nation did that? We saw that in Singapore. We had a leader who led the country for 31 years, and their focus was simply on development. We will claim that it was easier for them because of the fact that they're only a very small population. Even up till now, the population of Singapore was only 5 million people. But in our own case, we have the resources. We have the natural resources where we have not even touched, we have not even harnessed. Finally, if I could say this, Nigeria is too insular. In terms of we look at our problems on our own. When Europe was going to develop Europe, they went as far as coming to Africa and took slaves to develop their nation. Right now, we cannot enslave people, but let us hire people from developed nations. Enough of wearing agbada and appointing ministers and what. Let's use the UAE in Dubai. What they will do is they appoint you as minister of this, but really it's foreigners that are coming in to do the work behind the scene. We have experts around the world that we can bring into our system in mass, and let's develop this nation once and for all.
All right, that's really interesting to see, especially from that perspective. Now, let me bring it back to Mayoko here. Now, everyone talks about the issue of minimum wage. The TUC is asking for 200,000 naira as minimum wage. We have seen this discourse go on for so long over the years. And others are saying, well, after a few years, let us assume that even the 200,000 naira is approved. After the 2 years, that's keeping aside the capacity to pay and all of that. But after a few years, that 200,000 naira might not mean anything again, and they'll be asking for maybe 500,000 naira, as the case may be. What of the issue of ensuring that the value of the naira, inflation rate, comes down enough, for the currency to even have the value and the purchasing power and all of that? What do you say to that? Please break it down for us.
Well, you are in the realm of macroeconomics. I think if the government can focus on full employment, focus on low inflation, we will be in the right territory. We have to sit down, like I said earlier, look at the factors, run the numbers. Why is it that in UK, for instance, interest rate is around 3%, around the world anyway? In other countries in Africa, it's single digits. Why do we have to be doing 22%, 25% interest rates in Nigeria? On average, if I have a new business, how much margin am I going to get at the end of the year that will warrant me taking a loan of at 22-25% interest rates in the first instance? These are the things that lead to corruption. So, like the president said, he was talking about credit economy, which makes sense for those who are able to understand what he was trying to get. If I'm able to work and there is low inflation, I can save part of that funds. It is not what you earn ultimately that makes you a rich man. It is what you are able to save. So that's why when I was talking earlier, I mentioned the issue of NHIS. Every Nigerian, on average, is one illness away from poverty, no matter where you are in society. We've seen it elsewhere. Once one is sick, the fear of, okay, I have only 100,000 in my account. If I go to the hospital now and they said I should go and do test alone is like 70,000. Where do I start from? That consciousness alone can induce sickness. So, but if we are able to use NHIS, which is a social safety net, you pool the resources. It's like insurance. You pool resources of all the millions of people in Nigeria, maybe the working class, for a start. You pool those resources, you create world-class hospitals. Even the standard that Africa can manage, you build hospitals close to the people. At the end of the day, we are not as sick as we envisaged. And whoever is sick gets to go to the clinic and use the Commonwealth to treat himself or herself. So these are little issues for me. The 200,000 appears much. That's why I said government should be careful. I'm sure they will not pay 200,000. It might end up in the region of 100,000. Even the 100,000 should not be paid in cash. Let them save. You can do some schemes that if you are able to save 10,000 naira in a month, government will give you an additional 2,000 in your income. Government is saving for infrastructure, and the people who are getting their tax, and it even make people who are working to be dedicated, because, okay, if you are able to work in a place for 5 years, for instance, I've accumulated this amount of money. I can use it to start the business I've been thinking about for ages and stuff like that. You can look at cooperatives. How can government fund or help cooperatives so that whoever is interested in maybe building a house or doing something of that, don't have to work in blue chip companies to do all those. Government can help to make them work. Focus on whatever it is that is causing inflation, food inflation, as it were. The average Nigerian spends 60% of their income on food. These are things that should not be. In UK, it's closer to 10-15%. So if you spend 60% on food, you spend another 30% on transport. What else is available for you? The average Nigerian, if truth be told, those who pay their rent annually, they look for maybe loans to pay that rent, then they start repaying it throughout the year or looking for other sources of income. These are things that can also induce corruption, because if your take-home pay cannot take you home, you'll be looking for 2 or 3 other things to do. Some of them legal, some of them are not, to be able to meet your needs. So government can focus, use one stone to kill multiple birds. The starting point is sincerity of purpose. Am I in this to change the value, of Nigerians? Do I want to change the story? Fighting subsidy, removing subsidy is one way to go. The other part is fighting corruption wholeheartedly. We can't kill corruption, but we can reduce it to about the barest minimum. When all those things are done, you will see that funds will be freed. Whatever is meant for roads, we go to roads. Whatever is meant for health, we go to health. Whatever is meant for other things, we go to other things. I was looking at the 2023 budget as revealed by Budget the other day. You see that whatever has been allocated to solar panels, solar electrification somewhere, is about more than education. This should not be the kind of things we should be talking about. I even saw that even the army was allocated some funds to do some road somewhere in Plateau State. What concerns army with doing road? Government should focus on the budget, look at all those wastes, all those padded budgets, focus on them, bring them down to where they should be. If there is need, punish those who have made away with our commonwealth. These are the ways to breach that trust deficit you talked about earlier. When it's seen that this government means business, you all be surprised that even those who didn't vote for him will all but acknowledge that, okay, I think this is the person that we need, and he's doing what we want to do, what we want him to do at this instance, Mike.
All right, we're running out of time. I wanted to tap your brains, Mr. Elo, on the issue of NNPC, but let me come back to the studio. Let me hear from you, Abraham Great. So NNPC itself has also incurred many scandals in terms of claims. Even in the papers this morning, there are trillions, 8.4 trillion naira that, the agency in charge is saying that NNPC is yet to remit to the government. But, now that NNPC is now wearing a new toga kind of, and now that the market is expected to be free to enable competition, what do you make of the intervention or the role that NNPC has played so far in this new dispensation? Because some have said, isn't this like still the same as have been done in the past for NNPC to still be controlling the market somewhat? But what sense are you getting from that this issue?
See, one of the benefits of what we had with the past administration is some of the bills that were passed into law, like the PMI. So the fact that we now have NNPC privatized in itself gives us more of a confidence to see that we are running a private entity that will be more accountable. Because it seems in this country, everything that is government or purely government has a lot of ambiguity around it. So we have to also come to a place where government parastatals, not just NNPC, all government parastatals are automated in such a way that the revenues, the expenditure, the procurement can be easily tracked. But I also want to touch on what my colleagues were saying, that it is important also for the nation to go back to the Act, the Price Control Act. it was initially, passed into law in 1970, and I think in 1977 during Obasanjo, it was repealed. And I think the last time it was updated was in 2004. Now, that act is important because Nigerian pricing is almost dictated by anybody. So anybody will just wake up and say, oh, I'm increasing the price of my food because the value of dollar and the price of petrol. Today I was asking my driver, how much did you buy fuel? You were saying to me $4.90, but it's $5.11 somewhere there. Yeah. We need to be quite emphatic about pricing in this country. If not, we're not going to be able to control inflation. Now, I looked a little bit at that act, and I found that it's anti-innovation and we need to take something like that back into the House of Assembly and make it work for the benefit, almost like creating a tribunal that controls pricing in this country. It's very important for us, going forward.
Okay, it's quite good to know. This is a fine place to leave it here now. Abraham, great. I must thank you so much for your time.
Always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for
great.
having me.